Hello Minders, welcome back to the Mind of Watercolor. This ought to be a fun project. I'm going to finally get around to doing an actual painting with the Faber Castell watercolor markers. And I want to do it in my perfect sketchbook. It's a nice portrait format, so I think that's going to work great. I think the Fabriano Artistico paper is going to be great for this. And this is what I want to do. I really liked this weathered fence post, which is why I took a picture of it. And I think this is like honeysuckle or something. I don't know what that is, but going up around it. I basically don't like a lot of things about this artistically. I love the weathering and the grain and the lichen on the post, but I want to make it, I'm going to redraw it so it's a little narrower. I don't want all of these vines just this kind of wrapped here. I want to use just probably only about this much of a post, thinner, and just maybe a little strand or two of the vine coming up. So I'm going to redraw it, but this is still going to make great reference for the leaves, for the shadows, for this lichen, the flowers, and I may even down here there's barbed wire or fence wire. I may even pull a piece of that up in here. So I'm going to redraw this basically, but this is still excellent reference using those pieces. Well, this episode, like most episodes, is brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. Hundreds of viewers just like you who've decided to support the content on this channel, which will allow me to make more and keep it free from other brand sponsorships. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to the Patreon feed, early viewing of weekly episodes, priority access to questions and comments. For as little as $5 a month, you have access to a library of exclusive content, which is updated on a regular basis, private messaging system, a community board where you can share your own work and talk with other patrons. So thankful for you out there who are my patrons and for helping make this channel possible. Well, so I decided to do this fence post. Marker presents some interesting challenges. Watercolor marker in particular, at least these do not have any pastels, and most watercolor markers tend to be very vibrant and rich. So you have issues of laying down the color in the strength that you want, building up from light values. That presents a challenge. Mixing presents a challenge. So you have to think about markers in different ways. Generally, marker's not put down in large washes, so it's put down in very small bits or pieces. I mean, you can do some, which you'll see later, but for me, it works best to have a very detailed drawing. And this is going to be a fairly detailed painting. Since I tend to build up colors from light to dark very gradually, again, that just makes it a challenge with markers, which are very bold, vibrant, and go down strong. So I'm just designing this piece and drawing it out the way I'd like to see it using that reference. That reference makes excellent reference like that, but I didn't want to paint it directly, exactly like my photo. It's a little too busy, too many leaves, too much vines. I wanted to simplify it, get the gist of those vines. Really wanted that to set off the weathered cracks and crevices of this fence post, which I thought were really neat. So I'm spending some time on the drawing. So I'm trying different approaches. One method that I tried and I do use in this painting is called the dot dash method or the linear method, where you either outline stuff if it's something that you don't mind having an outline a subject, or use little dots and dashes, which will then loosen and wet into a wash. The other method, and this one I ended up using a lot, and I find this to be the most beneficial, is a marker dilution trick. Basically, you put water down on your palette, and I'm using a Caran d'Ache watercolor pencil palette here. Ceramic also works pretty well. But you put water down on the palette, and the marker soaks it up, and it pushes the pigment back. You'll see a light tip on that marker. All of a sudden, you have a very pastel marker. Now, it does not hurt the marker. The strength of the color eventually comes back. The more I draw and color with this marker, you see it gets a little stronger and a little stronger and a little stronger. And eventually it'll come back to full strength. So it's a really pretty useful technique. It allows you to put these colors down directly with the marker in very pale shades and just build it up as you want. Here's sort of a close-up so you can see that technique. There's water there. See how it soaks it right up? And all of a sudden you have a light tip. Let's push that pigment in the marker back. All that pigment's still there. You haven't lost any of it. But now you're painting with a very pastel color. It just gets darker as you color. And I use that a lot. As the painting progresses, and you'll see this, you can use more direct application methods. Here was a second benefit. As you do that technique with the marker dilution, you're leaving a lot of color on the palette that you can use later for touch-ups. So that was all sort of a win-win for me. Mixing is challenged because you either have to color down the marker onto a palette and mix it that way and then apply it with a brush, which just seems like a lot to go through. Might as well just use regular watercolor. Or you mix as you apply it on the paper, which is what I did. And if you're doing that in light layers, it's really not a problem. So you want to know what your layer mixes are going to be, test that out. Now here's where the linear aspects allow me to directly apply the marker. This was the Cool Gray Marker 4, I believe. So I lined in a lot of those features, those deeper features where the crevices and the cracks were in the wood. And now I'm just blending with the brush. By the way, these Albrecht Dürer watercolor markers are colored and numbered to match the watercolor pencil line, the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencil line. So if you have a Cool Gray Marker number 4, which I think is number 233, that's going to match up to the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencil 233. And I really think, although I haven't explored it completely yet, I really think one of the beauties of watercolor marker is mixed media. I just wanted to push myself through an entire painting using only marker just to see if it could be done and just to see the strengths, weaknesses, and techniques that might work with the marker. So just continuing to blend out these lines, sort of an overhead to the right light source. Here's this dot dash technique I sort of was using for shadows. Now I'm on Cool Gray Marker 6, I think. And I just drew or dotted some color underneath these leaves where shadows would be and pulled it out with a damp brush. Very effective technique. You just have to be careful that you don't create unnatural looking outlines to everything. That's a real tendency with marker. So a lot of times I was loosening that paint up and pulling it straight away from the edge to give it a natural shadow that didn't look like an outline. Now bright colors like these little flowers, which I think are trumpet honeysuckles, but I'm not sure. One of you wildflower experts out there can tell me. Bright colors with florals are a natural fit for markers. So I was able to apply this directly. They have sort of yellow centers. So I'm going through and applying all that bright color first. I'm using the bullet tip this time. And I'm going back and just doing a tiny bit of blending and smoothing with a damp brush. By the way, this brush is a number 8, Escoda Prado. It's a new brush that I'm trying. So far I'm in love with it. One comment about the brush tip. When I use, and here I'm using that same marker dilution technique on this phthalo marker. This is phthalo blue, green shade, and it's extremely powerful, so I have diluted it quite a bit. But I always keep the bullet tip end free from being diluted. So you can do that with the bullet tip too, but I don't do it so that if I need to flip over and apply the color very intensely, I can. And now I'm back to my dot technique, just dotting in some dark color and some shadows. As the colors get deeper and the values get deeper in your piece, you'll have more opportunity to directly apply color, like I'm doing here with these shadows. And since we have a wood grain, but also because I don't want to create an outline around those leaves, an unnatural outline, I'm pulling that color directly away. And these shadows were pretty dark. But this will establish for me my deepest values. One neat thing about when you are applying color directly and deeply and intensely, you can actually pick that color up with your brush and apply it elsewhere if you got too much in an area. I found it worked really well on this paper. It's Fabriano Artistico, as I mentioned. I had no problems with it and able to move the color after I applied it pretty easily. It's interesting because the little pamphlet that comes with the markers recommends using cellulose paper. The main reason I think is because watercolor sits on top of cellulose paper more than it does on cotton paper. And they probably are thinking, well, it's easier to move around. But if you're doing a layer technique like this, you're not going to want to use cellulose paper. You're just going to have frustrations trying to get, I think, layers. And of course, you know, for all the other reasons, cotton paper is so much better. And I really did not have any trouble getting the markers to do what I wanted it to on this Fabriano. Now I wanted to add a pop of color around the top of this fence post to really let the light values stand out. And so I kind of went into this right here with Fear and Trembling. This is phthalo green. And it's strong, as you can see. And I'm trying to just swash it in with marker, some broad strokes. But you're going to see I'll add some complement in a minute to help gray that out. You'll also notice that little end of the vine there, which is painted very delicately. I decided to paint over that just because I needed that wash to come down lower. No big deal. So we're going to see how this works. And here's the complement. This will help cut back on the intensity of that green a little. So this is how you mix, basically, with watercolor marker. You know, you decide what color you're trying to mix and you combine that and you decide what ratio. It may take some tests over on the side. But everything re-wet really well. See that nice gray-green I'm getting there? So I had tested this combination before I put it down, so I knew that they would complement each other and give me a gray-green that I was hoping for. And I just wanted that wash to go up off the top. I'll zoom out and you'll see that a little better in a minute. So you can see where I painted over the sort of delicate end of that vine. It's okay, I'm going to go back and paint it in darker with a few gel pen highlights. This worked out better than I hoped. I was a little anxious about it. I thought, oh, this may ruin it, but here goes. You know what I've said. You got to be brave. No guts, no glory. And the trick here to doing this background, making it look fresh and expressive, is don't overwork it. Overworking in this case would be overbrushing. Alright, so this is, as I said, the benefit of just without even trying, I've got all this leftover color on the palette that I can use for brush touch-ups. That was a real plus. And those leftovers were all from the marker dilution technique. So I'm just going to go through and make my touch-ups, and this is really starting to take shape, I think. Just deepening and popping the detail a little bit. There's the gel pen on that vine tip. Adding some texture to the leaves so you can see some suggestion of the little furrows that come on leaves. Process is just really enjoyable. And now we're done. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll zoom in and give you a little detail there and zoom back out. If you've got these markers and want to try it, I hope this is helpful to you. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks so much, patrons, and we will see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.